Welcome to the Circular Economy Coalition for Europe. The topic, or I would say better the question I would like to address today is to which extent the circular economy package of the European Union may reduce the demand of primary resources. At present, everyone is talking about recycling rates, which I believe is quite important, but I believe much more important for the success of the circular economy is the reduction of primary resources. And this will be the topic for today. As you all know, we are consuming a huge amount of resources, of raw materials. It is estimated that each European consumes during his whole lifetime more than 100 million kilograms of non-renewable resources. The majority is due to the consumption of stones, sand, gravel, so construction materials, but also fossil fuels, but also a significant amount of metals is demanded. This resource use definitely goes along with severe environmental impacts, which range from the emissions of climate gases to the emissions to water or soil. This is one big problem. The other problem now, in particular for the European Union, is that many of the resources consumed are not domestically available. They need to be imported. So the European Union or the European economy is heavily dependent on resource imports, especially when it comes to metals. This definitely bears a significant risk, and this has been recognized heavily a few years ago when China stopped exporting certain raw materials like rare earth metals. So in order to tackle these problems, our huge resource consumption and also the resource dependency, the European Union decided to move away from our present type of economy, from a linear type of economy, where we take, make, consume and then dispose materials, more to a circular type of economy where we're trying to keep the raw materials as long as possible in our economy in order to reduce thereby the amount of waste generated and also the amount of primary raw materials demanded. Besides the reduction of waste and also the reduction of primary resource demand, the circular economy is believed to have also further advantages. It is expected that to do keeping the resources as long as possible in our economy, we reduce environmental impacts, we reduce also costs for primary resources. The European Union will be less dependent on resource imports because those secondary resources, they are already existing in the European Union. And overall, we will definitely increase the resource efficiency of our economy. So these are some of the advantages, expected advantages of the circular economy package of the EU. I won't be able to address all of them now, but I would like to focus on the most important one, on what is the real impact on the material demand, on the primary raw material demand within the European Union in case if the circular economy package is successfully implemented. There too, we focused the research on municipal solid waste and on packaging waste, particularly because for both of them new recycling targets are stated in the circular economy package. For instance, for plastics, it is demanded that till 2030 the recycling rate will go up to 55% from a current level of about 23%. So we need to more than double the recycling of plastics, and also for other materials like aluminium, paper, or ferrous metals or glass, higher recycling rates are demanded until 2030. In our work, we investigated now 4 commodities. We focused on 4 commodities, namely plastics, ferrous metals, aluminium, and paper and cardboard. So how did we conduct our analysis? We performed a so-called material flow analysis for the 4 commodities: ferrous metals, aluminium, plastics, paper and board for the EU 28. And a material flow analysis simply means that we traced all the flows of these materials, starting from the raw material production, which could be based on primary or secondary raw materials, considering also manufacturing and trade, and the consumption of these commodities, and finally also the waste management sector, which either phases out the materials to landfills or returns them back into our economy in form of secondary raw materials. Another option in waste management would be the export of recyclables or wastes, or also the export of end-of-life products. So all these different flows were considered, and we investigated the current status, so the status quo, and we looked how the status would change in future if the circular economy package would be successfully implemented for municipal solid waste. So coming already to the results, starting with various metals, with iron and steel. In the picture you can see the aggregated flows of iron and steel in the EU28, and the data are given in kilogram iron per capita and year. I won't be able to explain the whole graph in detail, but I would like to draw your attention to a few issues. First of all, you can easily see how much iron and steel is produced each year in the European Union. This is about 300 kilograms per capita and year. And what you can see also very easily from the picture is the share of primary and secondary production, meaning how much of the production comes from scrap and how much comes from iron ore. About 46% of the European production comes from iron scrap, so this is the current share of secondary production for iron. The second issue I would like to mention, and which becomes obvious from the figure, is that what could be the maximum share of secondary production. So if we consider that all the wastes, so all the flows which go into the waste process, would be theoretically recycled, this amounts to 185 kilograms. And if this would be recycled, we could increase the share of secondary production up to 62%. So at present we have 46%. The maximum share would be 62%. The difference between the maximum share and the current share is mainly due to the fact that part of the iron is not recycled, is still going to landfills. Other part, a significant part, is exported. So the European Union is a net exporter of iron scrap, and also iron is exported in some different kinds of end-of-life products like end-of-life vehicles. So the EU, which on the one hand needs to import huge amount of iron ore, on the other hand is a significant net exporter of iron scrap. So this was the status quo, and now the question, what will happen if the circular economy package is implemented? What would happen if we increase the recycling rate of various metals for municipal solid waste? This would result in additional scrap quantities, which could be fed back to the iron industry of about 0.5 kilograms per capita and year. So thereby we could reduce the demand for iron ore of 0.5. So this increase is rather very small. So the share of secondary production by implementing the circular economy package for iron could only be increased by 0.2%. We performed this analysis also for other commodities. You see here the results for plastics. Here the production, annual production, amounts to 120 kilograms, and an implementation of the circular economy package would have a much larger impact, because MSW is an important source for plastic waste, and therefore higher recycling rates would have a really strong impact on the supply of recyclables. Okay. So summarizing the results for the four commodities. You can see on the slide the total annual production of the four commodities, which range from 13 million tons for aluminium to 150 million tons for iron and steel. Looking first to the secondary resource potential shows when considering present production of the commodities and the respective waste generation between 55%, this applies for plastics, up to 75% of the total domestic production in the EU could be covered by secondary raw materials. Again, considering that all the wastes could be recycled. The current situation in the EU is somehow different. It's indicated by the green bars, showing that at present only between 10% for plastics and 52% for paper and board is made out of secondary raw materials. The difference between the current share of secondary resource utilization and the potential share is mainly due to the exports of scrap and recyclables. So the EU is for all four commodities a net exporter of scrap and recyclables, and also for iron, aluminium and plastics, materials are also exported via end-of-life products, mainly via end-of-life vehicles. And the remaining part, the difference is lost due to landfilling, or in case of paper or plastics, simply thermally utilized and hence cannot be recovered as a material. So this is the current situation, and now you can see how the picture would change in future if the circular economy package is successfully implemented. The share of secondary production, or on the other hand, the demand of primary iron, aluminium and paper would almost not be affected by implementing the circular economy package. It's just increasing by a rate between 0.2 and 1.6%. Only for plastics, a significant increase of secondary production and thus a reduction of primary resources could be observed. So here we have a change of 11% for secondary production. The reason for these results are manifold. On the one hand, we do have the fact that municipal solid waste is for some of those commodities not the main source for the waste. This is one reason. On the other hand, a significant amount of the commodities we currently use, they are still utilized to build up our material stock, meaning our waste generation is far below the demand of materials we need. And on the other hand, for some of the commodities, we do have already a rather high recycling rate. So the proposed increase is rather low, and therefore the impact is limited. So based on these results, the conclusions would be that the circular economy should not only focus on municipal solid waste and on packaging waste, it should be extended to other sectors, because for some commodities, other sectors are much more important.